All right, Shalom. I want to begin by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there. And as always, you believers. So yeah, I'm back once again through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. As always, the focal point being Bible prophecy, which pretty much features the destruction of this wicked kingdom America, Babylon the Great, in which that act will be brought forth by way of World War III, which will serve as pretty much a moment in time that would provoke the return, the second coming, if you will, of our Lord Yahweh Shai, and the return of his kingdom. Now, if you caught that, I did say the return of his kingdom. And what do I mean by that statement? Well, the kingdom of heaven, the Heavenly Father gave a glimpse into that world, the kingdom of heaven, under King Solomon's regime. And for those of you out there who have the spirit of understanding, you know that Solomon was actually Yahweh Shai reincarnated. Matter of fact, let me grab some real quick to prove that before we get into this lesson. This is the book of 1 Kings, the 4th chapter. And I'm going to start at the 7th verse, but I'm going to jump around. And it reads, and Solomon had 12 officers. And Solomon had 12 officers. Does not that sound familiar? Well, when you consider Yahweh Shai, he chose 12, his disciples. You see? So we already see here the parallels of Solomon and Yahweh Shai. Again, it says, and Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel, which provided victuals for the king and his household, each man his month in a year made provision. Now, when you jump down in this chapter, right here, in the 25th verse, it says, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely. Now you see here where the scriptures is outlining Judah and Israel, which for those of you that know, we understand Judah represents the southern kingdom and Israel, the northern kingdom. So under King Solomon, the tribes was together. Well, guess what? We closing in on the world to come, and which will be the case as well. And right now is pretty much the foreshadowing of that, with the believers coming together, beginning at the prophets. You have the northern and southern kingdom linking up once more. See, this is all biblical prophecy. Again, it reads, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. Let's read this again. It says, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely. And that's another thing. Our people, they're looking for some form of comfort under Esau, the so-called white man. But according to what we read in here, the only time Judah and Israel would dwell safely, right? Let's read it again. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. You see? So in order for Israel to dwell safely, it must be under Solomon. And this is where the kingdom come in, which, by the way, Solomon represents peace. So when I made the statement concerning the second coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai and the return of his kingdom, where the kingdom of heaven would be a continuation of King Solomon's kingdom, which King Solomon, just a footnote, out of all the nations, when you go into history, you cross-reference certain kingdoms and empires, well, they never dwelt in peace. They always had some form of war attached or associated with it. It was some form of resistance. whether from outside of the walls of that particular kingdom or uprising from within. Nevertheless, King Solomon's kingdom was the only one that exuded peace. And again, that's a foreshadowing of the world to come. And guess what? We're closing in on that time. How do we know that? Because we're in a time of war. That time of war will provoke a time of peace. And that was the same with King Solomon. Matter of fact, stand in the book of 1 Kings, and I'm going to jump over to the 5th chapter. Yep, this is 1 Kings chapter 5, and I'm going to start at the 4th verse. Now listen up. It reads, "But now the Lord, my power, have given me rest on every side." And that's King Solomon speaking. So he's speaking to his kingdom in the fact that he had rest on every side. He didn't have to worry about being invaded, a kingdom coming up against him. You see, which that's unheard of. And what makes that kingdom unique in the fact that it dwelt peacefully. See? Well, again, that's a foreshadowing of the kingdom. Again, it reads, "But now the Lord, my power, have given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent." So King Solomon had no one to come up against him. See? Matter of fact, let me jump up a verse. Salaki, let me jump up to the 3rd verse. It says, "Thou knowest how that David, my father," which David's kingdom was before Solomon's. Now check this out. "Thou knowest how that David, my father, could not build an house unto the name of the Lord, his power, for the wars which were about him on every side. For the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet." So King David's kingdom was met with a lot of resistance. It was war on every side, right? But again, the 5th verse, "And behold, Salaki, but now the Lord, my power, have given me rest on every side." See? So that there is neither adversary nor evil occurring. So before King Solomon's kingdom, it was war on every side under the watch of David. Well, does not that sound familiar? Right now, you got war on every side under Esau, which would mean what? King Solomon's kingdom is on the way. See that? And that's the time we're in. So pretty much we're prepping you for that time. The kingdom of heaven. See? Which the kingdom of heaven is not what you people out there perceive it to be. You know, amongst the unlearned, your perspective of the kingdom of heaven is holding hands and everyone of all nations being equals, being parallel to one another. Oh, like this guy, Martin Lucifer King, he envisioned a world where little white boys and little white girls will hold hands. Well, guess what? That couldn't be farther from the veracity of the kingdom of heaven. When I say veracity, meaning the true sense of the kingdom of heaven. Well, as the kingdom would prove to be peace, as I just read in 1 Kings, the 4th chapter, where every Israelite would dwell safely under Solomon, it would figure to be a very rigorous rule, if you will, to the nations. Which brings me to this lesson, as you can see, the title of it being "The Horrors of Heaven." That's what the nations is about to experience in the world to come. Pretty much the Lord is going to recompense all the nations for the evil that they did to the children of Israel. And it will manifest in the form of the kingdom. See? So with that, let's go there. It's the book of Psalms. The 2nd chapter. And starting at the top, it says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing. And the heathen represents the other nations. So that's a cut on all of you out there who push forth the narrative that all the nations can come in on the inheritance of the children of Israel. You got this demon Vocab Malone who resurfaced with a band of other Jake going out. They confronted, I forget what camp it was, pretty much the rallying cry as the same, being what? All the nations can make it. Well, according to what we read in here, the Lord pretty much look at the heathens and their desires as a vain thing. Let's read this again. It says, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? It said the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. So the Lord is pretty much, he's discouraging the advances of the heathen. And the top heathen being Esau, the so-called white man. Because right now, this man is in a desperate attempt to somehow establish his new world order. You see the infrastructure being laid out for the CHIP. You got biometrics being brought more and more to the forefront, which that's, again, a desperate plea for the so-called white man to remain in power. And why is that? Because he understands the horrors of heaven. When you read the parable concerning Lazarus and the rich man, basically it gives you a glimpse into the so-called white man's worst fears, man. And that's to go into captivity. Because he understands once he's under our feet, he's going to be brutally dealt with. He know that. See? So he's exhausting all of his resources, energy, time, and money, whatever, at his expense to try to keep from that reality. See? Again, it says, he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. And that's what we're witnessing real time. These devils scrambling. Pretty much everything this man do is an attempt to escape his fate. See? To sidestep his destiny. Verse 5, it says, then shall he speak unto them in his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. And that's dealing with the kingdom of heaven and ultimately Yahushua having a dominion with every man in their order. Beginning at King David, the 12, and all of that governing body. See, what the scriptures promote is king's language. It deals with what? Power, dominion, and rulership. And this is what Yahushua was teaching when he settled in the earth 2,000 years ago. He was pushing forth the kingdom. See? Verse 7, I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Now, we're going to go back there, but real quick, let me go to the book of 2 Samuel. The 7th chapter, it's starting at the 12th verse. It reads, and when the days, Salakia, and when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers. Now to set the stage here, this is Nathan the prophet speaking to King David, and he's pretty much laying out his legacy. He said, look, when you die and you go rest with your fathers, the Lord is going to establish your seed. And who was his seed? It was Solomon. So let's pick it up there again, 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, beginning at the 12th verse. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee. And again, that's dealing with Solomon, which shall proceed out of thy bowels. So this is literal. He would come out of his line. You see? He would come out of his sack. He says, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. So we see the lingo. The promises is dealing with the kingdom. Verse 13, he shall build an house for my name, and what Solomon did, it says, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Hold up. Did not King Solomon's kingdom stop at 40 years? So how could this be possible? How could this be so? The only way you can make sense of this, the only one who this could be associated with is Yahushua. That's the only plausible, reasonable thing we can come up with to make sense of this. Again, it says, he shall build a house for my name, which Solomon did, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. So again, King Solomon's kingdom came to an end. So what kingdom would be established forever? It would be the kingdom to come. So basically, this was an intermission, so to speak, where the nations had the mastery over Israel, subdued us, until the Lord continued this kingdom. And which we know the Lord is not a man that he shall lie. So if he promised that he would establish Solomon's kingdom forever, then when would this take place? Again, we right at the cusp of that. And how do we know that? Because we're in a heavy time of war, like I mentioned. As we read in 1 Kings, the 5th chapter, well, before Solomon's kingdom was set up, prior to that kingdom, King David's kingdom, there was war on every side. See? So lo and behold, you have that same energy in the earth. There's war on every side. Meaning what? The duality of the Most High, that war will be balanced off with peace in the world to come. Verse 14, and it's the point. I will be his father. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. Hold up. The Most High is speaking about Solomon. Who else have he ever made reference to as being his son in the scriptures? Yahushua. Matter of fact, let's go there. We're going to come back here. Give me 1 second, man. It's freezing up. All right, this is the book of Matthew, the 3rd chapter. And starting at the 16th verse, it reads, and Yahushua, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water. And lo, the heavens were opened unto him. And he saw the Spirit of the Most High descending like a dove and lightning upon him. And that was actually a chariot when you get into it. Verse 17, and lo, a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved son. This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. So the only person throughout the scriptures, when you read about our forefathers, the patriarchs of the Bible, for an example, Moses, he wasn't referred to as the son of the Most High. The Lord didn't say, this is my son. See? He only made reference to Solomon as well as Yahushua being his son. And right here, let's read it again. It says, and lo, a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. And let's go back, right, in history to the book of 1 Kings, the 3rd chapter. And I'm going to start at the 5th verse. I started the 5th verse. It says, in Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And the Most High said, ask, what shall I give thee? So where else can you go in the scriptures and find where the Most High went to one of the prophets and said, look, what do you want from me? See? So we're going into sensitive information right here that gives you clarity concerning the validity of Solomon and the power given him in the favor, the overall favor from the Most High himself. Let's read this again. In Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And the Most High said, ask what I shall give thee. And in this lesson, we're going to see what the Lord actually going to give Solomon. And you're going to see where it links right into the kingdom of heaven. Verse 6, and Solomon said, thou hast shown unto thy servant David, my father, great mercy, according as he walked before thee in truth and in righteousness and in uprightness of heart with thee. Because David was a man after the heart of the Lord. Salakia, and thou hast kept for him this great kindness, that thou hast given him a son to sit on his throne as it is to this day. And now, O Lord, my power, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David, my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. And thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people that could not be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart. So the Most High asked Solomon, what you want from me? And Solomon said, look, give me an understanding heart, right? Now check this out. Verse 11, and the Most High said unto him, because thou hast asked this thing, and has not asked for thyself long life, neither has asked riches for thyself, Slakia. I'm gonna read verse 9 again. It says, and give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. So again, you see what Solomon asked for discernment. He asked for wisdom, right? It says, for who is able to judge this thy so great of a people? Verse 10, and it's the point. And the speech pleased the Lord. And the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon asked this thing, which links up to what? Let's go back here to the book of Matthew, the 3rd chapter, and the 7th verse. And lo, a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. You see, so we just read in 1 Kings where the Most High made that same statement of Solomon. He said, look, your petition for wisdom pleased me. And we know, pursuant to the book of Malachi, the 3rd chapter, the Lord changeth not. So this Solomon is actually Yahweh Shah. See that? So now, let's go back to 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, and again, the 14th verse. And this is concerning Solomon. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And again, the Most High didn't speak concerning that dynamic with any other person, save Yahweh Shah. See? It says, I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, and which Solomon did, I will chasten him with the rod of men. Now, when did Solomon get beat with the rod of men? He didn't. He died peacefully. That happened when he was Yahweh Shah. See? Again, it says, if he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the children of men. This is why the scriptures say, by his stripes we was healed. So you see the link between Yahweh Shah and Solomon when you go into the records. Verse 15, it says, but my mercy shall not depart away from him. See, but my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. So again, King Solomon's kingdom is pretty much in a moment of intermission. This is just a brief intermission before we get back to that kingdom. And guess what? It's going to be at the expense of the nations. The nations is going to feel the horrors of that kingdom. See, which brings me back to Psalms, the 2nd chapter. And again, the 6th verse, it says, "Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord have said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee." So we know who that's concerning. That's concerning Solomon, which is again, Yahushua. Verse 8, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance." So we just read in 1 Kings where the Most High came to Solomon by night in the form of a dream and said, "Look, ask of me what you want from me." And Solomon said, "Look, give me wisdom to rule." And that's why the Most High said, again, right here in the 8th verse of Psalms, the 2nd chapter, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance." Now, why would the Most High say, "Look, ask of me, and I'm going to give you the heathen," only for the Lord to come back in the New Testament and say, "No, I want to save everybody"? No, he said, "Look, I'm going to give you the heathen because I know you. I created you. I know that's what you want." Matter of fact, let me grab some real quick. Bear with me. Like I said, this phone taking a while to load up. Give me a second. It's the book of Luke. I believe that's 11. Yep, this is the book of Luke, the 11th chapter and the 11th verse. It says, "If a son shall ask bread of any of you that is a father, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks fish, will for a fish give him a serpent?" Let's read this again. It says, "If a son shall ask bread of any of you that is a father, will he give him a stone?" So if your son asks for bread, you ain't going to give him a rock, right? It says, "Or if he asks a fish, will he for a fish give him a serpent?" Right. So if your son asks for fish, you don't give him a serpent. Verse 12, "Or if he shall ask an egg, will he offer him a scorpion?" So when the Lord, the Most High, said to our Lord Yahushua, "Look, ask of me and I'm going to give you the heathen," that means that's what Yahushua wanted, man. See? Why would the Lord say, "Look, I'm going to give you the heathen," but that would torment Yahushua? No, I want to save everybody. I want to save vocab. No, the Lord said, "I'm going to give you the heathen," because he know that was a part of his desire to rule. See? And what you think we're going to do with the heathen? Well, let's go back. Scriptures, it outlines what we're going to do with the heathen. Again, Psalms, the 2nd chapter, in the 8th verse, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance." And we just read, well, the Lord said, "Look, if a son asks for fish, I'm not going to give him a damn scorpion." So Yahweh's desire was to receive a heathen for his inheritance. And what are he going to do with it, with the heathen? Let's read on. It says, "In the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession, thou shalt break them. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." So that's giving you a glimpse into the kingdom. In the world to come, the heathen going to be broken into vessels, man, with that rod of iron. And guess who's going to join in on that inheritance? We are. This is the book of Revelation, the 2nd chapter. This is Revelation 2, and starting at the 25th verse, it says, "But that which ye already," Salakia, "but that which ye have already, hold fast till I come." And what do we have? We have this truth. That's why it's highly encouraged to not deviate from the doctrine. You know, you got men out there who corrupted the word that they was entrusted with. See? Teaching things that they ought not. So that disqualifies them. But it proved that it wasn't your inheritance. You see, for you men out there who teach wayward philosophies, ideologies, you bring in these heresies, that only proves that that's a manifesto that you are not a joint heir with Yahweh Shah. See? Again, it says, but that which ye have already, hold fast till I come. And guess what? Yahweh Shah on the way, man. Each day the sunrise and sunset marks a day closer to the return of our Lord. And like I mentioned at the top of the lesson, and the return of his kingdom. See? Verse 26, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end. See, so you can't at the last hour in the fourth quarter switch up the doctrine. You got to keep the works to the end. See? It says, to him will I give power over the nations. Let's read this again. It says, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. In which we just read in Psalms, the 2nd chapter, where Yahweh Shah received that. He received the heathen. Matter of fact, let's read on. Verse 27, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. Did not we just read that as touching Solomon? How the Lord would grant him the heathen to have the mastery over them. He would rule them with a rod of iron. What we read right here in Revelation, the 2nd chapter, were those who would be considered joint heirs to Yahweh Shah. We're going to have that same luxury. We're going to have the dominion over the nations as well. See, it says, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. So just as Yahweh Shah received that luxury of ruling over the nations, we're going to receive that as well. In which the scriptures goes into a vivid illustration of that. Which brings me right here to the book of Isaiah. 60th chapter. And starting at the 10th verse, it says, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls. And that's dealing with the kingdom of heaven. Who are these strangers? That's dealing with the other nations. Scriptures say the sons of strangers. Now your son come after you. So this is a future prophecy. So in the future, the strangers, which in this case, again, is the other nations, their sons, their offspring is going to build up our walls. Just like how now these devils, they benefited off of the backs of slavery. They pretty much had free labor. Matter of fact, give me a second. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Yeah, you devils, man, you got a big tab, man. You're going to pay. Not just the so-called white man, all the nations, but you devils, you're going to get it the worst. Hey, because when you go into all the nations and the lot that's touching their lands, they're going to receive their lands. They're going to be tributaries to us in the kingdom. But Edom will be the only nation that's not going to receive any mercy. We're going to take their land. And they're going to live in goddamn holes in the ground. Whereas right now, they live in lofty. But in the world to come, they're going to be in damn holes, and they're going to be visited, as it is written. So real quick, let me see if I could track this. Give me a second. Yeah, because you devils, you pretty much benefited off of free labor. That's why you up. Let me see. It might be hard for me to track this. Yeah, that ain't it. Let me try this way. All right, so I think I tracked it. This from all right, so this is from Chat GPT. You can see right here. Hope y'all can see that. I hope it ain't flipped. But it says the impact of the transatlantic slave trade on what became the United States is huge, and a lot of the economic patterns it created still echo today. In which, down in these parts, not too far from where I'm at now, is up on the hill. That's spiritual in the mountains. These devils, you got a city called Mount Brook right off the outskirts of Birmingham, which Birmingham sits in a valley, which that's spiritual. Most of Jake, the urban areas is down in the valley. And those devils, it's high level Jews. A lot of those devils, they spring from the Vanderbilts and even the Rothschilds, right? So you got those banking families. It's a highly rat infested area, so-called Jews. But if you look it up, Mount Brook is one of the top 5 richest cities in the world. And when you go up, man, the homes up there blow you away, man. You like, God damn, what these motherfuckers do, right? I was doing a little delivery up there, man. And I saw a home, man, you wouldn't believe it. But they so-called Jews, but you'll say what they do is they entertainers, is they athletes? No, they pretty much benefited from slavery, man, because it was free labor. See? And that's what we're reading here. Again, it says the impact of the transatlantic slave trade on what became the United States is huge, and a lot of economic patterns is created still echo to today. It says to answer your question, because the question was asked, this is the question that was asked to chat. I hope y'all can see that. It's flipped. It says, how did America benefit from the transatlantic slave trade? So it says to answer your question, clearly, yes, America did benefit economically, especially early on, and some of those advantages carried forward. It says, but it came at an enormous human cost that shaped an inequality that still exists. So it was at the expense of, like the brother put, real generational wealth. You got a nigga with a food truck and he entertaining the concept of generational wealth, or a record label. Lot of dope records. Jake, you don't got a clue, man. All right, it says from the 1600s through the 1800s, enslaved labor powered key industries, especially in the South. Crops like cotton, tobacco, sugar, and rice were extremely profitable. Enslaved Africans, which were Israelites, were forced to produce this wealth without wages. So you had to pay shit. It was off of our backs, which we know that goes back to the curses. In that predicament we found ourselves in for pretty much not continuing in the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. But Yahweh Shema Shai is going to visit you for that. See? It says by the 1800s, cotton was America's #1 export. And lo and behold, who was picking it? It was Jake, man. It says, for an example, the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney made cotton production explode and slavery expanded with it. It said the results of this, the U.S. became a major global economic power. See, you think that's a coincidence? That was at the expense of Jake, man. That's why we just read in Psalms, the 2nd chapter, where the Lord told Solomon, look, what you want from me? And Solomon, being the wise man he is, he said, I want the heathen. Why? Because he understood in the future, in the world to come, we will be doing nothing more but recompensing, right? Matter of fact, let me grab that real quick, and we're going to go back. I believe that's the book of, is that second? It might be First Thessalonians. Let me see. Slacky. Yep, this 2nd Thessalonians, the 1st chapter, in the 6th verse, it says, seeing it is a righteous thing with the Most High to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. So this is a righteous thing when we speak concerning the world to come. Pretty much we're gonna possess the heathen, and we're gonna gain wealth because of their labor. And we're gonna get back into that in the book of Isaiah, the 60th chapter. So, in which, by the way, that word recompense translates to payback. See? So the Lord is about payback. All right, so back here again, it says, results, the U.S. became a major global economic power, much faster than it otherwise would have. Did y'all catch that? Let me read it again. It says, the results, right, of free labor off the backs of slaves. It says the results of that, the U.S. became a major global economic power much faster than it otherwise would have. See that? So these devils, which they throne, being America, Babylon the Great, which, by the way, is pretty much the most prominent or famous place in the scriptures besides the kingdom itself. And what made it famous? Slavery, man. It says the foundation of major industries and banks. The profits from slavery didn't just stay on plantations. They spread into northern banks, financing plantations, insurance companies, insuring enslaved people as property. All these insurance companies that you get, insurance for your car, your home, they set up because of slaves, man, and the free labor of Israelites. It says shipping and trade industries moving goods across the Atlantic. Yeah, because they're enslaved, they insured slaves. Like if your slave jumped over the overboard, though they would insure them. And a lot of time they'll throw them overboard and get the insurance money. If they got sick, It says, even cities like New York City and Boston grew wealthy, from trade connected to slavery, despite being in the North. It says infrastructure and national growth. Wealth generated from slave labor helped fund railroads. All right, these trains that you see, that's off the backs of slaves, man. That's not some random invention. It says wealth generated from slave labor helped fund railroads, ports, expansion westward, early industrialization. The country developed faster physically and economically. It says long-term generational advantage still felt today. See, long-term generational advantage still felt today. This is where this is where it connects to this day. After slavery ended in 1865, formerly enslaved people were largely denied land ownership, wealth building opportunities, equal access to education and jobs. That's how the devils repaid you. And you even see that today. Or when you had ICE closing in on a lot of Issacharites, right? Is it one story of these Edomites? They hired some Issacharites to do their roof. And the last day of them doing the roof, they had ICE. They called ICE on them. That's how they paid them back, man. So that's what you see. That lingers. That ancient age-old conflict between Jacob and Esau. It says after slavery ended in 1865, formerly enslaved people were largely denied land ownership, wealth building opportunities, equal access to education and jobs. Meanwhile, white Americans, especially those tied to early wealth, were able to pass down land, money, and opportunity. And what's the course, the source and the core of that? Slavery, man. See, policies and events like Jim Crow laws, redlining, 20th century housing, discrimination. Let me jump down a little. There's a lot here, man. It says the U.S. still have racial wealth gap today. Oh, which I was maybe 10 years ago, it was a while I did a lesson on it, where you had this, it was this Edomite, I believe she was a professor at Yale, or a perceived Edomite, and she went into the wealth gap between Jake and Esau, and she gave a vivid illustration. She said, just to give you an illustration, and it was like two people racing, and one person had 1,000-year head start, and before the other person could start running, they had to put on cinder blocks for shoes. So it gave you a vivid illustration. Even when you try to catch up, you through, man. You got Jake who got a contract in the NBA, but they can freeze your money. Right there, there's a discrepancy. It says the U.S. still has a racial wealth gap today, rooted partly in slavery era advantages. Global economic positioning, the U.S. rose as a dominant exporter and economic force in the 18th and 19th centuries, partly because of slave-produced goods, mainly because of slave-produced goods, man. It says the early advantage helped position the U.S. as a long-term global power. The reason why the U.S. is head and shoulders above all these nations is because of slavery. Now it says, important reality check, while America as a nation benefited economically, it's important to be clear, the system was built on exploitation, violence, and dehumanization. We ain't gonna even go, man, you'll blush at some of the offenses these devils committed against Jake. You see? The system was built on exploitation, violence, and dehumanization. The benefits were not shared equally. Many people were harmed while others gained wealth. Yeah, Jake suffered while Esau benefited. That's what happened when you have your enemy in captivity. As it is written, give me any wound but the wound of an enemy. says bottom line, and again, I see that might be flipped on y'all end. The bottom line, America benefited in these key ways: rapid early economic growth, development of major industries and financial systems, infrastructure expansion, long-term wealth advantages that still influence inequality today. But those benefits came directly from a system that created deep, lasting social and economic divides that the country is still dealing with. Yeah, because look, if I, let's say like, if I was in a motorcycle accident 10 years ago, okay, the water, I guess it's just on my end, but let's just say like if I was in a car accident 10 years ago, the scar itself proves that. See? The scar itself bear witness. So the scar, Jake is the scar. You can't get around. You could try to take it out of the school books. You could try to suppress it as much as you want. But we that scar, that bear witness that we are those people. You see? It says, if you want, I could break down how much of the day's wealth. See, they're going in, man. If you want, I could break down how much of today's wealth gap is directly linked to slavery versus later policies, or show specific examples of companies or institutions connected to it. Let's see. It might call out some names now. You're going to be mad at work Monday. You see, slavery, the starting point of the gap wealth. By the time the American Civil War, end of slavery, enslaved Black Americans had virtually zero wealth. They did all the goddamn work. See? Yep. They would give back. Yeah, you devils gonna pay, man. You gonna give it back, and we gonna get that too in Isaiah the 60th chapter. See, because if I was to hand this information over to someone who had not the Comforter, right? Yep. If we were to get this information to someone who had not the Comforter, they'll be pounding that work. But guess what? We could go into the scriptures, and the scriptures comfort us. It shows that we're gonna get them back, man. See, because that's why, again, Yahushua said, because Yahushua, that's Solomon, the wisdom made him say, look, I want the heathen. Because if I get you, then that means I get everybody. Did they get us? That's how they benefited. It was off of us. It was our labor. They had us. You see? It says, enslaved Black Americans had virtually zero wealth. White Americans controlled land, business, and capital. One of the biggest missed turning points was special field orders, often called 40 acres and a mule. It briefly promised land to formerly enslaved people, but was reversed. See? It says in 1865 to the 1960s, policies that reinforced inequality. The period is arguably just as important as slavery itself. Check that out. Them devils, man. And you watch the Andy Griffith show? That was around that time, man. Ain't shit changed, bro. Let me see. Let me see if I can pull that. Okay. 1865 to 1960, policies that reinforce inequality. The period is arguably just as important as slavery itself in shaping today's gap. It says Jim Crow's laws enforced segregation, redlining, white families brought homes and built equity. Black families were largely locked out. And go back, you can look no further than the Holy Scriptures to get understanding concerning these things. That's why you see the title of this lesson, The Horrors of Heaven. Because if you did us like that, And like the brother put, double. What the hell? We got to have the new bodies to go into that. It says, how much is slavery versus labor policies? A simple, yeah, it's a lot here, man. Okay, now I'm gonna get to some names. Companies, banks, and universities tied to slavery era profits. J.P. Morgan Chase acknowledged the predecessor banks accepted enslaved people as collateral. Took ownership of enslaved people when loans defaulted. It says universities, Harvard University, Georgetown University, received donations tied to slavery wealth, in some cases used enslaved labor. These schools became powerful institutions with large endowments that still exist today, man. It says how this still affects everyday life. Housing, very relevant today. Credit and banking. Yep. It's a lot, man. So let's go back to the scriptures. This is now you're going to see why the scriptures is the comforter. See? Back in Isaiah, we get ready to close up in a minute. Back in Isaiah, the 60th chapter, and again, 10th verse. It says, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls. See that? That's not as menacing as it, right? Because we built up they fucking walls. See? So this is Yahweh comforting us. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. That word minister goes into what? Serve. And that's dealing with all the nations. When they say they kings, that's not just dealing with King Kim Jong-un. That's dealing with ancient kings of old as well. Ramses II, for an example, who put hell on us with the ancient Egyptians. The Lord gonna raise that spirit back up. You're gonna know, damn, that's King Darius. See? He might be a damn cupbearer. See? Again, it says, and their king shall minister unto thee, for in my wrath I smote thee. Yeah, the Lord smote us in his wrath, and he used his left hand to do it as it relates to this most recent captivity we had to suffer and endure. It says, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. And that begins now. That mercy is captured in the form of this truth, which opens you up into the wondrous works of the Most High. In which those works also come with what? Recompensing our enemies. See? It says, therefore thy gate shall be open continually. Let's read this again. It says, therefore thy gate shall be open continually. The gates represents what? Your storehouses, you money. That's how you make money. So just like them devils, they benefited off of our backs, that free labor, which lingers even to this very day, that generational wealth. How much more in the kingdom? Our gate's gonna be open continually. It's not gonna be a recession. It says, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles. Just how you get you get stuff, goods brought in, cotton and shit like that. We're gonna have Gentiles brought in. Let's read this again. It says that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. We're gonna be sent back, and we're gonna be having loads of kings. These ancient kings, Putin, they're gonna be coming in chains, man. That's the kingdom of heaven. See? Verse 12, for the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Yeah, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Yeah, because just like now, you got these devils who have the dominion over the earth. They'll hit you with sanctions. When in the kingdom, if you don't serve us, you're going to be wasted. You see? Verse 14, it says, the sons also of them that afflicted thee. Hold up, did not we just go into the information where the strangers, and most notable Esau, afflicted us? Let's read this again. It says, the sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee. So that's how they're going to come to us. They're not going to come standing up, looking us in the eye. They're going to come bending in chains. Just like how you have inventory and it's all tied up. That's how the people are going to come. They're going to be tied up in chains, man. The sons of them that afflicted thee shall come bending. And by the way, the sons is you in the future. The father represents you in the past. The son represents you in the future. So the very ones who put hell on us, we're going to get them back. And we're going to have them new bodies. We're going to know exactly who it is. Oh, this that devil who funded, he put his last stock, all he had, into the transatlantic slave. He invested heavily in it. We got him. It says, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet. You see that? That's the lingo. It's dealing with rulership. It says, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One in Israel. See? That's what they're not going to call you spics. They're going to call you the Holy Ones of Israel. And guess what? They're going to blessings, right here in Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter. Because remember, Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, consists of the curses, but it also outlines the blessings. You see? And we're going to read a little of that. This is Deuteronomy 28, starting at the first verse. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy power will set thee on high. See? Above who? All nations of the earth, which goes back to Solomon's blessing. See? And we're going to keep the commandments because we're going to have the new bodies. That's going to be the new covenant, where the statutes and laws will be in our inward parts. And that proves that we're not in the new covenant from a full, perfect, right? We actually in the beginning stages of the favor of the Lord. But ultimately, we'll know that we're in the new covenant when the nations is beneath us. Right now, we're in captivity, man. And what we have is the promises. See? And the promises lies within the scriptures. That's why the book was unlocked. When you read Revelation, the 5th chapter, the book, the seals was open so that now we can see the promises that laid ahead. You thought that the favor of the Lord was peak with you having a good job, you die, and maybe you could send your child to an HBCU. No, it's way beyond that. See? Oh, it reminds me of that movie, Color Purple. I brought this analogy out before. Well, remember, she got hope when she found them letters. That was spiritual. That's when she got hope. That's when she stood on her feet, because she knew that it was something beyond that house, man. Again, it says, and it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe and to do all his commandments. That's going to actually happen in the kingdom. Because we're going to have the new bodies, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy power will set thee on high, above all nations of the earth. See, you get it? That's the kingdom, man. That's rulership. And that's not going to be good news for the kingdom, the other nations. What's good news for us is going to spell bad news for the nations. It says, and all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power. And again, you can't really do that now. You can't keep the commandments now. That's why it's going to happen in the world to come. It says, blessed shall thou be in the city, and blessed shall thou be in the field. Now, I'm gonna jump down. There's a lot in this. Like I said, for sake of time. Now, remember, we just read in Isaiah the 60th chapter where the Lord said, what? We're going to be called the Zion of the Most High. The nation's going to come bow to us, and they're going to acknowledge us as being the true people of the Lord, right? So we're going to pick it up right there. It says, the Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he have sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord. We're going to do that in the world to come. See? Thy power and walk in his ways, and all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord. See that? And they shall be what? I'm going to let y'all see that, man. See that. Look. The 10th verse. And they shall what? Be afraid of thee. See? That's what's going to happen in the kingdom, man. They're going to be afraid of us. Why? Because we're going to have that favor, man. And plus, that's going to be manifest in the form of that rod of iron. Remember, we read that in Psalm, the 2nd chapter, in relation to Solomon's blessing, and how Revelation, the 2nd chapter, complements that, and how we will be joint heirs to Yahushua. And in that event, we're going to rule over the nations with a rod of iron as well. And we see that's being conveyed right here in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. See? It says, and the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle. We're going to have new bodies, and in the fruit of the ground, in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. See? So we'll stop it there. All right? You get it. The promises entails what? The kingdom of heaven, which would be nothing more than the next regime, if you will, that's set to govern over the planet Earth. And guess what? It's going to be at the expense of the nation. I don't give a damn how uncomfortable that message comes across to you people out there. See? That's a sweet savor until you believers. And to water Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, because the Most High remembered us and remembered the promises he swore to our forefathers, which to give us the land. And with that land comes what? Everything else. Oh, scriptures tell you that in 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter. If the world was made for our sakes, then why don't we have a portion of it? And what's the point? The world was made for our sake. So Israel, Yasha'Allah, the princes of the power, was created to have dominion over the planet Earth and everything in it. And what's in the earth, what comes with that, what's part of that package deal? The nations. So yeah, with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Wachak Wadash, double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there. And as always, you believers. To the next time, shalom.